Everybody is talking about Victor Wembanyama, one of the most hyped prospects in the history of the NBA, the number one overall pick, of course. So I'm going to ask you this question. What are your expectations for Wembanyama this season?
Look, he's a great kid with a great story, but I believe he's getting historically overrated. And I know we don't have very much to go off of, but based on what we've seen just in this past French League final versus Monaco, by the greatest prospect in sports history standards, he underperformed in a 3-game sweep. In game one, where his team needed him the most, he drops 8 points in a finals game. That's unacceptable. And he failed to get one game over 10 rebounds. You're 7'5". I'm mostly concerned on how he's going to adjust to the physicality of the NBA. Just imagine Wembanyama trying to guard Giannis, on Embiid, on Jokic. He could barely handle Kenneth Lofton Jr. Look, as far as the rookie of the year goes, I like the odds of players like a Scoot Henderson, like a Brandon Miller, like the Thompson twins, and a player that a lot of people have forgotten about, Chet Holmgren. Look, he's had over a year to work out with NBA level coaches and to get stronger, and someone who's just overall in a better situation right now in the OKC Thunder opposed to the San Antonio Spurs. So look, overall, I think he's a great kid. He has great character, but on the basketball court, I think the media is setting him up to be one of the biggest flops in NBA history. That's just what I think.
Wow. That's very controversial, I have to say. Well, look, in terms of Rookie of the Year, these awards are very much so media driven. And one thing we all know is that the media is hyping up Victor Wembanyama like they have not hyped up a prospect since maybe a Zion or LeBron. And I think that just around the hype that he's going to get with the media, he dunks. I know he's 7'5", but he dunks. ESPN's posting it. House of Highlights is posting it. Everyone's going crazy. A 7'5" guy dunked. I know, it's unbelievable. Anything Wembanyama does is going to be so overhyped. It's going to be so pushed. I don't even think he has to average crazy numbers for him to get the Rookie of the Year. And I'm not saying that he would deserve it, but I'm just saying that we know that these awards, it doesn't always go to the guy who deserves it. It goes to who is hyped up the most by the media, who has the best narrative. And Victor Wembanyama has one hell of a narrative. Now, last season, Paolo Banchero won Rookie of the Year, averaging 20 points, 6.9 rebounds, and 3.7 assists per game. Honestly, I feel as if Wembanyama can get very similar stats to that. And I think if he does that, he will be in the driver's seat to win Rookie of the Year. Because you look at guys like Brandon Miller, I don't know if he's averaging that. I'm just going to be honest. I look at Scoot Henderson. I really like Scoot Henderson as a player, but he's playing with Dame. I don't know how many shots he's going to get. I don't know what his numbers are really going to look like in this first season. And that's assuming Dame stays in Portland, of course, which I think we all think that he will because he's never going to leave Portland. So, I like the Thompson twins as well, but I just think his main threat, in my opinion, would be a Chet Holmgren, who you mentioned. And I think I do like the thought of Chet Holmgren winning Rookie of the Year. I think he's in a better situation in OKC. I think ultimately he has had that year with NBA level coaching, which I value a lot. And I think that's going to make him a much more NBA ready player compared to anybody coming out of the draft, or Wembanyama, Scoot, whatever. So I think that would be his main threat. But I just think the media is going to give this award to Wembanyama, whether or not he deserves it or not. I think that's ultimately how this situation goes. And I'm not going to take it as crazy as you and say that he's going to be a bust, he's going to be a fraud. I think Wembanyama is going to be all right. But I don't think he's going to be GOAT debate. I don't think he's going to be that good of a player. I think he's going to be a pretty damn good player once he develops, once he gets, some NBA years under his belt. But I'm not going to sit up here and act like he's going to be the next LeBron or anything like that, because I don't think that's realistic. I think that his ceiling is to be a Hall of Fame player. That's a ceiling. But he's not going to be a top 10 all-time player. I don't see that happening. So I think he's just going to, his best case scenario, he's a Hall of Fame level player. And that's one hell of a career. You tip your cap.
Absolutely, shit.
You know what I mean? Like, if you told any NBA player they're going to be a Hall of Fame level player, you take that. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to sit here and act like he's going to, be in that GOAT debate. I don't think he's going to be a Kareem level player or anything like that. I think that's a bit too much. But ultimately, until we see him in the NBA, I think it's just speculation. We're just going based on speculation at this point. I need to see him play some NBA level competition. And based on what we've seen in the French league, I don't think that's enough to really fully judge Wembanyama. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I do think he will be good. I'm not going to take it as far as you did.
Yeah, and look, when I say that there's a possible him being the biggest flop, I think just because how they're building him up. They built him up as they're almost quoting him. I think it's almost ridiculous to say that he's one of the greatest prospects in sports, not even basketball, in sports. That to me is just almost disrespectful to the past players that were great prospects, like a LeBron James, who actually a player that somewhat lived up to that, almost exceeded that.
He
And
did. He exceeded it.
that's where my problem with that lies, especially with a guy in Victor Wembanyama that I think there's a lot of questions there. Like, people are saying he could easily be within the next 5 years the best offensive and best defensive player. I just don't know how that's possible unless he's going to pack a couple cinder blocks in his back pocket. He's just too light. He's too skinny to be that momentum on the defensive end, especially against those players that I named off. But I think he's going to be. I think he'll still be a good player. I'm not saying he's going to be a Kwame Brown or a Markelle Fultz here, but to the standard that people want to say he's going to be, that, oh my God, he's some alien unicorn. We've never seen something like this before. Yes, we've never seen anything like this before. But to what are we really going off here? The only really player I can compare him to, like a lanky, skinny finisher, is a Kevin Durant. That's literally one player
and he's
ever
taller than Kevin Durant.
And he's taller than Kevin Durant, but so that makes it, it's a bit of a different, different game. It's a whole different way they're going to play. But that's the only player you can kind of, say, oh, well, look at Kevin Durant. He's skinny. He doesn't, he's not. That doesn't really matter. He doesn't have like the bulk like a Giannis or an Embiid. But that's one guy. How many other guys can you put? It's not like you have a pool of players that are just like that. Like, oh my God, look at this guy, look at that guy. That's a one-of-one type guy. And maybe Wembanyama is going to be that. But it's just the physicality. We're starting to even see right now the physicality get to Kevin Durant, to where some defenses are starting to make Kevin Durant look somewhat human. Not, before the Warriors or OKC Kevin Durant. Like, we saw the Boston defense basically just pocket him. Like, if a defense like that goes up against Wembanyama, I just don't see it going well. If Wembanyama is going to live up to at least half the expectation that people are giving him, it's going to take him about like maybe 2 or 3 seasons to really adjust. So I'm not saying he's going to be completely, out the NBA and the G League or anything, but I'm just saying they're building him up so highly. Just if as soon as he slips up, they're gonna come for him. That's just what's gonna happen.
And I'll look, the one thing that everyone raves about Wembanyama, oh, he's 7'5" and he can shoot the three, but realistically, he shot 27.5% from three last season. You know what I mean? So if he's really going to be that lethal of a shooter, he's going to have to improve that. He's going to have to get better in almost all aspects of his game. And obviously, he's going to be working with Pop. He's going to be working with the San Antonio Spurs. He's going to get better. I'm not saying he's not going to get better, but we're over here acting like he's some, coming into the league as a lethal shooter. Like he said, Kevin Durant. He's not. He can make them. He can make them. But if he's taking a three, you live with that. That's kind of how I would view Victor Wembanyama. I think I would much rather him take a three than have him in the paint at 7'5". That's just how I would see it. Mm-hmm. I mean, 27.5%, that's not really moving the needle that much for me. You know what I mean? We're talking about, like you said, people saying in 5 years he could be the best offensive and best defensive player in the league. And obviously within 5 years, you would assume that he would get better shooting the basketball. If he doesn't, then, that's a whole other problem. But right now, he's coming into the league last season shooting 27.5% from three. He's going to have to take that to at least 33% in my mind, at least to be considered, okay, it's a pretty good shooter. You know what I mean? You got to step out and guard him a little bit here. But right now, you know what I mean? He's not that great at shooting.
Yeah. And I didn't want to pose this question to you. So do you think Wembanyama is going to help the Spurs get to the playoffs? What do you think? Like, how far do you think Wembanyama is going to get in that rookie season? God forbid he stays healthy.
I would be shocked if the Spurs made the playoffs this season. I think their ceiling is to sneak into the play-in. And that would be a miracle, because that would mean Wembanyama had to have the rookie season of his life, the rookie season that everyone, the media is expecting him to have, because people are expecting Wembanyama to come into the league like he's LeBron, being the savior for the Spurs, that he's just going to take them to a whole nother level, elevate everybody around him, make the whole team better. And obviously his stats are going to be crazy. That's what people are expecting. In order for the Spurs to make just the play-in, that's how good he's going to have to be. And like I said, I don't think he's going to be that good in his rookie season. He could develop into a player that is that good. But what I'm talking about right now is rookie season. I would be shocked if the Spurs made the playoffs, because if they did make the playoffs or the play-in, either one, that would mean Victor Wembanyama would have had to have had one of the best regular seasons from a rookie of all time. And I don't see that happening. I don't even think he's going to be an all-star in his rookie season like we've seen from some rookies in the past. I think most recently was Blake Griffin who did it. It doesn't happen often. Oh. I would be shocked if Wembanyama made the all-star team this season. And look, we know the all-star team, it's sometimes fans and he could sneak in there on that type of thing, but I don't know if he would deserve it per se. That based on the stats, that's my point.
Yeah, I would have to agree as well, especially in the West. I mean,
The
it's
West
the
is
West.
loaded.
It's the West. It's the Western Conference.
It's always going to be tough.
It's always going to be so super difficult, man. But like you said, he's going to have an all-time
But
rookie season.
OKC is considerably better than the
Yeah,
Spurs. And I don't even know if the Spurs are going to be like guaranteed to make the playoffs. Or I mean, the OKC is
no,
going to be
OKC.
guaranteed
Yeah,
to make the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
they were the
Especially
10th seed last year.
yeah, especially when there's teams like the Pelicans and no one knows what's going to happen when the
No,
Pelicans
yeah,
hit
we don't
Grizz.
know.
I mean, even
People
like
forget.
people like have to realize that's a really stacked conference.
It's
And
tough, yeah.
yeah, and other than that, do you see Victor Wembanyama winning a championship? And if so, how long do you think that would take? And I know it's almost an impossible question to answer, but we got to ask these questions.
Winning a championship with the Spurs?
With the Spurs. Oh, I think just Wembanyama
in general.
in general.
I mean, he very easily could win a ring at some point. I mean, who knows if he's going to go on to be a ring chaser later on in his career or some
He
sort of
wins
that. Do I think he'll
20th
win
year.
a ring as the number one player on a championship level team? Can he be the best player on a championship team? I think that's kind of what you're asking.
Basically, yeah.
His ceiling is being the best player on a championship team, of course. I mean, obviously, that's very achievable for what we expect from Wembanyama, but do I actually think it'll happen? I mean, look, the NBA now, it's not just one guy. You can't just have one guy. If it was about just having one guy,
No.
LeBron would have a lot more championships than 4. You got to have a good team around you. Look at Denver. You know what I mean? They got Jokic, they got Murray, and then they got a hell of a good group of role players around them. So it's very difficult to predict, but I would say I would be shocked if Wembanyama at some point throughout his career, he's only 19 years old, if he can't win one championship. I would be shocked. You know what I mean? But best player on a championship team, I don't know. He's going to, at some point, the Spurs are going to have to get him a second star, or he's going to have to leave San Antonio and team up with a second star. You can't win a championship by yourself. It's impossible.
Yeah, no.
You know what I mean? But there's not really big threes anymore. I mean, we'll see what happens with Phoenix. But like we said in the previous video, I don't think that's going to win a championship. Victor Wembanyama is going to have to get a duo. He's going to have somebody with him. And if that happens, whether that's on the Spurs or on a different team, sure, he can definitely win a championship. I have no doubts about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think overall winning a championship, I think he'll win a championship. But like you said, I just don't think he's going to win a championship as the best player. I can see him being the second best player. Like he could be that, that complimentary guy, more than like a role player, like the second best player. But as the number one, finals MVP guy, I just don't really see it. I just don't see it.
I guess we'll have to find out and see. I mean, ultimately, that's a conversation that we're going to be having for years. Years.
I mean,
we might never get the answer to that question.
We
for
might
a long
never,
time.
And we're not gonna sit here and hold it against them. After his rookie season, well, Wembanyama, you didn't win
you're not winning,
championship,
buddy.
You're a flop, buddy.
Yeah.
Start learning Chinese. Because we know how long it took like players like Michael Jordan, LeBron James.
I mean, it took LeBron 8 years.
Yeah, even Nikola Jokic, players like this, Giannis Antetokounmpo. These all-time great players. It takes a long time and a little bit of luck. Because it just has to happen. The stars have to align.
Injuries.
Yeah, some injuries sometimes, but we're gonna. It's all about how you get to that point. I mean, if you're averaging the points and you're a consistent all-star, and then you get that championship, obviously you're gonna be able to have it the same way.
I think a lot of it depends on what's Greg Popovich's future looking like. I mean, look, let's not act like Pop is a spring chicken. This guy's old. I think this guy really stuck around because of the fact he wanted to coach Wembanyama. But how long is he really going to be doing that? He's an old guy. I mean, look, we know he loves the ball. We know he loves to coach. But at a certain point, you can't coach anymore. It doesn't matter how much you love it. Your body says, look, I gotta, get away from the bench. I gotta step away. This is it. Your body can't do it no more. So look, we're talking about an all-time great coach. So I think there's so many question marks. By the time Wembanyama was ready to win a championship, I don't think Greg Popovich would be the head coach for the Spurs anymore. And it kind of depends on who's their replacement. If they're going to win a championship in San Antonio, they better have a damn good replacement lined up for Pop.
Yeah.
They better have one. I mean, and I'm sure Pop wouldn't go unless he knew that the guy who's next up in line is ready to take, you know what I mean? But I don't know. There's so many question marks. It's a very difficult question to answer. And it's one of those things. When you get the number one overall pick, you are almost always going to a bad team. You know what I mean? The Spurs, let's not act like just because they're a historically great franchise that they're a good team. They're not. No. They got an all-time great coach, but they're a bad team. They are shit.
They're not good.
Now they're adding Wembanyama and everyone's expecting them to, go from zero to hero. It's not necessarily, it doesn't always work like that. Rarely does work like that. I think it's very likely we see San Antonio in the lottery again next season. And then we're talking about who is San Antonio going to pair up with Wembanyama. And I don't think they're going to have the number one pick again, of course, but I could see them having a top 10 pick again very easily. And then, that gives you your chance. if you draft right to get your guy with Wembanyama, and then you go from there. You build. And, that we go from there. That's ultimately going to answer the questions that we just posed. You know what I mean? That's good. That's when we're going to find the answers out. Right here in this first season, all we're going to find out is Wembanyama the real deal? Was the media overhyping him? That's what we're going to find out. But we're not going to find out the answer to, is he going to win a championship? Can he be the best player on a championship team? We'll find out that in maybe a couple of years.
In a good amount of years, yeah, we'll have to find that out.
But you're going to have to let us know in the comments down below. What do you think about Victor Wembanyama? Is he a fraud? Is he overrated? Is the media hyping him up to be too much? Let us know in the comments down below. Do you think Wembanyama can be the best player on a championship team in the future? Let us know in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel for more content. Drop a like on the video. And without further ado, we can get out of here.
Let's get out of here.
So I'm Zach.
I'm G.
And we'll see you next time for another video on the channel. Peace.